Hello and welcome to another jungle tutorial, and after a good long wait we are going to be having a look at some of the most fundamental and core jungle routes you need to know as we head towards the end of season 9. And yes, not much has changed since the scuttle spawn time was pushed back in the mid-season. However, the greater meta, champion buffs and nerfs, different meta laners can all impact which are the best routes to be used, which are the most successful, and which have the biggest impact in terms of getting early leads, and of course winning games. And naturally, when there is a dominant clear in the meta, things can become predictable, and as such you will have counters and different options we can use that stem from that. And of course, if you do enjoy the flying lasers and different things that take a lot of time to render in these jungle routes videos, please consider liking the video and of course subscribing to help us close the gap to 100k subs. So if you suffer from indecisiveness or don't know what route to choose for your particular champion, all of that is coming up with fancy effects and more after Rast gives you a message.
League of Legends can come down to the finest details. Even the smallest item differences can cause a 1v1 to swing either way. So don't make a fool of yourself, make the smart choice, head to u.gg's builds and rune page for the best win rate, items, rune sets, and skill ability order, in addition to using their dedicated runes and item win rate pages, all customizable by position, region, MMR, and more, and find the hidden OP with u.gg in 30 seconds or less.
Well, now that he's lost that 1v1 to AP Kindred, we can jump right into the meta jungle route. As you can see on your screen, this is the red side jungle route, and I just released an in-depth look at how you can use this route to string together ganks, dominant leads, and endgames very quickly, which I will link in the top right and the description for you. So I'm not going to go into too much of the meat and details because I feel I just discussed it in the previous video. However, the whole point is to clear your red side, get level 3, look for map impact, and of course once you've done that, you can have the option of ignoring blue side completely, invading enemy blue, securing both scuttles, but the core tenet behind this route doesn't matter if you're going from red to raptors to krugs. The whole point is that you end up getting the rubber banded experience from those camps. The value of the second spawn krugs and raptors is so high that you can forego an entire side of your map and merely focus on ganking, pushing those waves, and coming back to the second spawn in order to maximize your own experience gains. Now obviously that isn't the only option. The whole idea behind it is knowing which lanes are going to be pushing and which lanes are going to be gankable, so you can structure which way you would like to go. In the last video we looked at a Talia and Rexa example breaking down when you would decide that, but if we use this Echo just as a good framework, he goes from red to raptors to krugs, he knows the top lane is going to be pushing. His laner has set up the wave so that it is stacked nicely. You have a good wave of minions that can help you tank tower aggro, that can swarm the enemy laner, because you know what, minions, they really do hurt at those early levels. As you watch the skirmish unfold, there are many examples of this kind of play happening, whether you go across the map to do it, whether you do it on the same side of the map. The whole point is first blood, push the wave to deny, and get a tower plate, all setting you up for scuttle crab control, further gank control, and of course rubber banded krug and raptor experience. Now you would have noticed, hey, wait a second, why was the Silas up there ready to counter gank the top lane push anyway? The Silas was actually late to the rotation and should have been there slightly earlier, being able to read the play. So what did he do to put himself in that position? I'm very glad you asked. There is an extended mode to these red side clears, as you can see on your screen now. And when I briefly showed the whole main red side meta route, the whole goal there was tower diving a side lane, ganking the mid lane, or invading the blue buff. If you maybe don't have such gankable lanes, if your team comp isn't set up to have beautiful tower dives at level 3, you may simply want to maintain control of your own jungle and look for more opportunistic ganking. That means you can do your red side as this Gragas does, and then head straight to your blue. Now in the mini screen you would have seen that Nidalee has done the bottom side clear and looked to gank in the bottom lane, got in a cheeky assist. Very easy as Nidalee, throw a spear, throw out a heal, get yourself some free gold, and then she's looking to transition that immediately into an invade on the Gragas. That's because she assumed he would have done the same clear, perhaps even looking to take that topside scuttle and invade her blue. However, he played the mind games correctly and was there to defend his own buff. This is absolutely vital when you don't want to have vertical jungling, and it's one of the direct counters to the route. You know, it's the same route, you just protect your house rather than going into theirs. You also obviously forego a side lane gank, but if your lanes are not in such a state, that's not a bad thing. Now remember, the whole goal of all these routes is high impact. That means you need to be ganking or at least shutting down the enemy jungler, but it doesn't always need to be an invade of their buff. The second option you have there is, instead of going from your red side straight to your blue, you throw in a drive-by on the wolves, you take your blue as a 5th camp, and then you have priority on the blue side scuttle. This works best when you know where the enemy jungler started and you know that they're not going for that level 3 tower dive in the bottom lane. Maybe they're not even on that side of the map. If you have a ward early in their red buff or their raptors, so you can sort of project their pathing towards the other side of the map, you can relax and you know that the enemy is not going to be invading your blue, you know the enemy is not going to be contesting that scuttle crab, and then you can look to gank on the mid or bottom lane depending which is in the best position. As we're looking at Rengar here, he gets a nice gank on the mid lane. Now if we flash to an Ornn example, which I of course play a lot, and just while you watch Ornn go through the sequence, just remember you can do blue side into raptors red and do the same thing, or you can go red raptors into blue side. It's a reversible jungle route. Now what happens if the enemy jungler has a different route, perhaps doing one of the interior clears or the other things that we talked about in the previous jungle routes video? Maybe they gank on the top lane. When they have lower resources or you have information of where they're located and they have no idea where you are, that gives you map control. It means you can take the scuttle, hit the plant, show the heck room on the Krugs, and because you know he's there, because you know he's low resources and he will be in no position to contest the bottom side crab, run across the mid lane. Now remember, the drive by in the mid lane is not just to get to the crab, you need to read the situation a little bit. If your lane is pushed all the way up, you know that's easy. Run across, you're not detected, thumbs up. If it's pushed in the other direction, you just simply gank the mid laner. They won't expect you're going to be there. You can float around the back of the lane, grab some summoners, maybe grab a kill, and if it's neutral, you can also simply walk through a bit of pressure, help your laner, and go and secure that bottom side crab. Now if you have excellent jungle senses, you know the Hecarim would have gone back to base after Krugs, you know he took his entire red side and most likely started on that blue straight into the wolves, and that's how he got to the top lane so quickly. You could also even counter CS, you press tab when he ganks top lane, you see 12 CS, and then because you hit the plant after the gank and saw him on the Krugs, that means he had 4 camps done without the Krugs, which means either his Grump or his wolves will be up. So when you hit that plant after doing the bottom side scuttle, you get good vision to see what camps are up, and when you're planning invades, trying to track the enemy jungler, all of this information, understanding their clear is great for you as well as your team, so you can track ganks and set up counter ganks and so on. Now the whole thing about this clear is that you ignore the Grump. Instead of ignoring the Krugs, you ignore the Grump. So once you've done those 5 camps, taken both scuttles, tracked the Hecarim, hit both plants, your Krugs and Raptors should be spawning again. So if you have lanes in really good states that aren't really gankable and you don't need to dedicate much time to those, you can immediately fall back down to your second Krugs, your second Raptors, your second Wolves, you can take the Grump for the first time, and now you've got a beautiful camp sequence map with a ton of experience and room to ward, gank, and do whatever you need to do to get that win. Now, however, if you are a Rek'Sai, a Kha'Zix, a strong meta jungler, you want that heavy lane impact as soon as possible. So if you follow a Kha'Zix here, rather than have any kind of invade shenanigans, he does exactly what we talked about in the last video. Red clear, into a gank, into one side scuttle. The assumption and tracking around this when you both do this clear and look for ganks at level 3 is that there will be an exchange of scuttles. However, this extension is not so much focused on ignoring the blue side of the map, just weaving it into your ganks and then having 4 clears much like the Ornn. So it's the Ornn style plus a whole bunch of ganks. So the Kha'Zix here has done his gank in the mid lane, he can fall back and take his whole blue side, and then he can look to gank in the mid lane again. So unlike the Ornn who basically focus on getting all those camps and scuttle control and then the Krugs are up again, in this case you've managed to get in 2 ganks, get a scuttle, clear your whole jungle, you get to go back, and once you reach the red side again, you have the option of the rubber banded Krugs and Raptors, or you can invade, or you can gank again. The whole point of this red side clear, the whole point of understanding which lane you want to gank and focusing those red side camps is that you have the options to make decisions based upon what the enemy jungler does and what the enemy team is doing. Now if you take the Ornn's example of camp sequencing and combine it with the Kha'Zix's idea of ganking as well as controlling your own jungle, we can sort of apply it to this Talia example. She does a red side clear, she tries to do the tower dive in the top lane, it doesn't go so well. However, the Renekton is able to TP back in and they do get the kill on the Aurelia. But now of course you've given up a lot of time and map pressure, so she goes directly back to base. Most of us are thinking conservatively. Yes, we would just go and control our blue side, maybe get the scuttle. Talia straight to the bottom lane. That is a gankable lane, it is in a gankable position. She's kept her eyes open for that, and that's really a jungle fundamental. You need to adapt your idea based upon what's happening in those lanes. If this is skirmish, if suddenly it's pushed up, go ahead, forgo your camps, forgo the scuttle, gank on the bottom lane. Now that's 2 ganks on the side lanes. From there she can fall back, she outsmites the enemy Nidalee, and now instead of ignoring her blue side camps and perhaps ganking mid, then ganking top, and then taking her red again, she's focused on doing what the Ornn did and clearing from top to bottom her entire jungle. Now everyone who is complaining that they can't do Raptors and Krugs in the first clear like a Warwick, and please don't do it, it just takes way too long, you run out of mana and you won't have enough resources to make a play subsequent to that particular route. You want to stick to the route we did in the last video, which was dedicated entirely to that blue and red clear, so I'm not going to talk about it here. If you want to watch that, you can do so. That still applies, it still counters the Krug clear, and is still very powerful. However, here you have different options based upon what your champion can and cannot do in terms of early jungle camps. If you're doing something like a Kaiser, which you saw in the last video as well, you go from red to Krugs to blue, you're level 3 now, and it takes a more long-winded approach, but you really can't sustain yourself on those Raptors nearly as well, and so from there you can look to gank. If you're being cautious because perhaps the enemy laners are rotating and you don't really want to be invaded as a Kaiser jungle of all things, you can still have that high impact route and segue into a second spawn of the Krugs by doing your Grump. You can then gank on the top lane after you've taken the Scuttle Crab, and as I talked about, use that nice pathing around the back of the mid lane, kill that mid laner, and then you get the bottom side crab as well. So you get both crabs, 2 ganks, and essentially you'll forgo the wolves and the raptors because they're more difficult to take, and it's an outside route versus an inside route. You know, you can see the comparison on screen now. The Hecarim earlier did an inside route, Kaiser here you do the outside one, but once you've done that, you can look to invade, you can see where the enemy jungler is, maybe gank on the bottom lane, but the Krug should be up for that second spawn. From there you can go back, or you can go back beforehand and segue your camps nicely. All of these will counter anyone trying to invade your blue provided you have the vision and the ability to defend yourself, so be aware of that. It's all about that timing. Don't do 5 camps and then complain when you get invaded at your blue. If you prioritize doing that blue before the enemy jungler was able to rotate to it, you wouldn't be invaded. You could have control of your own jungle, so pay attention to these things. The Kaiser clear is very nice because you get the blue sooner than they expect. Additionally, if you're a Xin or a Jarvan, level 2 power spike, you're very strong, you can invade, you can do level 2 ganks, you know the enemy jungler because of wards or just because, you know, meta, they're going to be doing the whole red side clear we've been talking the whole video about, you can simply go from your red into their blue. Maybe you take their Grump, then you can go and gank the mid lane, defend your own blue, and you've 3 buffed the enemy. Maybe you even get a crab along the way. It's that whole early level 2 Xin meta that we had before, just with a bit of an extra camp thrown in, and you can still invade, you can still defend your house, and thanks to his kit you've got very nice level 3, level 2 ganks also. And one more thing, I guess I lied, I do want to talk about the route that I said I wasn't going to very briefly. Remember, if their whole goal was to do Krugs and then to steal your blue, this denies them that advantage, but by the time you've gotten to your red, you should know whether or not the enemy jungler is ganking on the top lane like the Talia and the Echo have done all video, looking for the tower dive, or simply a straight up gank. In this case, you see the Sejuani's there, and the fact that your Zyra really doesn't matter. You know she did 3 camps, you know she's on the top side, you clicked and looked, you know she had no blue buff, walk on over, steal that blue, and enjoy 3 buffing the enemy. It's the same thing as the Xin, just with a more safer approach. So there you have it, a whole string of examples of different routes and how they play into each other. Obviously we could spend about 20 minutes on each one individually and the options available to it. If you're interested to see what happens further along in the game when you do these strong routes, please see the Dominate the Early Game video I just did. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like, share, and comment if you enjoyed and learned something. We always like to get around 1,000 likes per video. Shows me what you really enjoy. And if you did, please look at my other videos and consider subscribing to help us get us to 100,000. We're almost there, baby. And with that, I will see you all in the next tutorial.